Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Brandon. How you guys doing today? 'Cause I know that I'm doing really good right now. I just checked my score, my credit score, and it went up 53 points today. That's crazy. So I just want to share a little bit about my credit journey with you. Over the past about a year, I've been working on my credit and trying to get it good because when I was younger, I had no idea that a credit score was actually important to anything. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant to have good credit. I didn't know what it meant to have bad credit. And I didn't know how bad it would hurt you to have bad credit. So what I did when I was 18 years old, I opened up a bunch of credit cards and I thought, free money. But that was not the case. I ended up getting about $1,500 in credit cards. And I just decided one day that I didn't want to pay them back. Now, needless to say, I was 18 years old and had no idea what I was doing. But years later, that finally caught up to me, and here's how I fixed it. All right, you guys, so let's start off with my credit journey. In June 2018, I checked my credit score, and it was a 484. And I really had no idea what that meant or how really bad that was. So keep going a year. I never really did anything about it. I just kind of researched about here and there about like how to fix your credit. Never really took any serious actions. And then last September 2019, I started actually really looking at my credit score and actually figuring out how to fix this because I'm getting older and one day I would like to buy a house. And I guess that you have to have good credit to buy a house. Something that I wish I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self this. So my score was a 555 last September. And that's when I initially started my journey. And I had raised that score over the next month by doing some work here and there and touching up some pieces from 555 to a 589 in 1 month with honestly, very little work. And then that kind of gave me some fire and it made me excited. And I was like, party, my score had gone up 30 points. It was still really bad. But my score had gone up over the next month of doing just a little bit more work from a 589 to a 612. Okay, I started to see a pattern and I thought this could be a cool thing. So I put a little more effort in last November and by January my score had gone up to a 630. Okay, so now fast forward, we all know what happened in the beginning of this year. COVID hit, and so I just kind of focused on my businesses and focused on making money and didn't really focus on my credit repair journey. So it kind of sat stagnant over those couple months, but I should have continued. But by not putting any effort in, my scores just kind of flatlined and stayed the same. So then flash forward to last month, June 2020, I buckled back up and I got back into it and I started working on my credit again. All right, you guys, so now you're thinking, how did I do this and what actions did I take? So I kind of just taught myself and came to YouTube and Google and did all of those things to figure out how I could fix my credit score because I had no idea what a credit score was. So what makes me think that I would know how to fix a credit score? All right, so my first step was I got organized. And by getting organized, I meant I collected my credit reports from everywhere that I could get a free credit report. This included Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, and I also went to this thing called annualcreditreport.com. And they give you a credit report for free once a year. But I think during COVID, they're doing it, you can have it like once a month or something. So take advantage of that. But it does not show you your actual score, but it does show you everything that is on all three reports. It's a very handy tool. So I took all of this information and I put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And I figured out where I was lacking and like where my missed payments were, because we know I had a bunch of those. Where my collections were, because I'm sure I had some collections. And I just got organized and I put everything in there that was derogatory. And I kept the good stuff out because we're not focusing on the good stuff because it's already there. So I took all my negative stuff, like I said, and I organized it by importance. And by importance, I meant like the cheapest ones and the lowest price ones. But then I also put in there notations next to the ones that were the oldest. Because the older ones were going to be my least priority because they're affecting my score the least. And if all else fails and I couldn't get them off, they're going to fall off. Like a collection stays on your report for 7 years. So does a bad payment, missed payment. So then after I got organized, I took everything that I had and I started tackling what I could. First step of business was starting to pay everything that I had on time, which I had been doing over the past couple of years just because I knew that was important at this time in my life. So I continued paying those things on time, but I also increased my minimum payment on the things that I was paying. And on top of that, I also started paying right when I got the bill, as opposed to when the due date was. I paid the minute I got the bill. And then I started tackling my biggest thing, which was my collections. Because I had probably 5 collections on my report at this time from just like random things that I had done. Like I had got a credit card and I never paid it. That was the worst one. But I just had like a medical bill. I had a couple little things in collections that were like $50 that I just actually had no idea were really on my report. And I had forgot that I never paid that. I know. I should never have forgot these things. But I started looking up how to take a collection off. And I heard of this thing called pay for delete. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so awkward to call somebody and tell them that I want to give them less money than what is owed for them to take it off my credit report. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm actually going to do it. So I called up my first credit agency, or my first collection agency, and I said, I didn't acknowledge that it was my debt. That's the first thing you want to do, is just don't acknowledge it's your debt, because you don't want anything to come back and get you later on. So what I did, I called them and I said, they said, however much the debt was, they had me verify who I was, which, I mean, I can't, like I just said, I'm here to settle a debt. So what I did, I called them and I said, hey, my name's Brandon. I'm here to settle a debt. And they told me how much it was. And then I said, okay, I can offer you, say the debt was $500. I said, I'll offer you $200 right now to pay it off, but I also need it deleted. And then they hung up the phone for a minute, went and got some authorization, and actually most of the time they came back and they accepted the offer, even though it was less than half of what the actual debt was. And then sometimes they would come back with a counter offer, which, I mean, was still a pretty good deal. But after we had agreed on this, I also said, before I pay, I need it in writing that this is going to be deleted off of my credit report. Always make sure that you get it in writing, because if it doesn't come off of your report and you need to show it to the credit agencies, the reporting agencies, that, hey, I paid this and they told me it was going to get deleted, you can send that to them through a dispute and it will automatically get removed. So make sure that you always get it in writing. Alright, so the next thing we're going to talk about is late payments. I had a slew of late payments on my credit report. They were on there for probably like 5 years or more. But they were still holding my score down, and they were still really pushing that number down way too far. So what I did is I sent a verification letter to everywhere that had a late payment to make sure that everything was reported to the agencies correctly. And then they would either come back with the verification, or they would say, they wouldn't just verify it and it would just fall off my credit report, and done, wash my hands of that. So if they came back and verified it, what I would do next is I would do a thing called a goodwill letter. And I'm sure you've heard of this if you're fixing your credit. But a goodwill letter is actually a very good tool to use. It worked extremely well for me. What I did is I would just write a letter and I would say, hey, in my situation, hey, I was young and dumb and I had no idea what I was doing with credit. I apologize. And is there any way that you could help me by removing some or all of my late payments so that I can have a fresh start to moving forward? And a lot of times they wouldn't take off all of them. I mean, I wish they would, but a lot of them wouldn't. But they would remove some of the late payments, and that instantly would boost my score up. Because just being honest and being kind and just taking accountability for my crappy credit decisions, it actually boosted my credit score a lot by just asking for them to remove it. And I know that a lot of them might come back and say, we have to dispute fairly. And I mean, that's fine. But hey, as long as you try a goodwill letter, and even if it doesn't work, what I would do is I sent it by mail, and I also would find a fax number and I would fax it. And if I didn't hear anything back within a couple weeks, I would send it again, and I would fax it again. I would just harass them the way that they would harass me. So, with that being said, I got a good amount of late payments removed, and this is where my score really started to improve, because that's about 35% of your whole score is your late payments. All right, so what I did next, as I started making more money personally, I started investing back into myself and paying off these debts that I had in the past. So ideally you want to have 30% of your utilization ratio on your credit report. So say that your credit limit is $100. You should only be using $30 of that every month, because if you go over that, it makes you kind of look like a high risk lendee. So no other lenders like that. So I paid everything off on even my closed accounts. I had some closed accounts that still had a balance. Don't ask. This was a mess. I'm not kidding you. And so I paid everything off that I had, and I made sure that I kept it all under that 30%. Ideally, they say 10%, but I mean, sometimes you just can't do that. So your 30% is where you should be comfortable at. And then also, to start building some good credit history, I opened up, nobody was going to give me money. Let's be honest, like nobody was going to give me a credit card at this point. So what I did is I opened up a secured credit card through my my credit union that I use, and I gave them $250, and they made a credit limit of that onto a credit card that reports monthly to the credit agencies. But if I weren't to pay, they had that $250 deposit, and they could just take that, and we could just part ways. But I should have done more, because the more you put in, the higher it makes your credit limit on your reports, and then that's easier to mess with your credit utilization. So what I did add $250 on a credit card, a secured credit card, through my credit union. And on that credit card, every month I would buy one soda and just charge it. Just a credit card. What is that? Like $3. And then I used my same trick that I used earlier that I said about paying my bill right when the bill came out. As opposed to waiting for the due date, I paid it right when the bill was out. And that showed that our early payment, but also showed that I was using way less than 10% of my my credit limit. But I was also having something charged every month for them to report to. You have to have something charged, otherwise it doesn't, I don't think it works that well for them to report. Or they don't report entirely. And then the next thing I did after I got the secured credit card, I opened up the thing called Self-Lender. It's actually a really cool tool. I actually found it through just a quick Google search. And basically what you do is you open up a line of credit with this Self-Lender. But what you're doing is every month you're paying them, for example, I pay like $48 a month. And that goes into like a CD or an account that they're holding on to. And for the next year, from September to September, so it'll be paid off next month, I paid my $48, and then I got that money. I'm going to get that money back at the end. So it's kind of like just a cool way to save, honestly. And it also built my credit limit or my credit score through an installment loan, because you want to have a different variation of credit accounts on your reports for it to report well. So I had a secured credit card, and I also had the Self-Lender, which was an installment loan, which reports as an installment loan. And by doing that, I had 2 instant approvals because it was their credit building. And I also was able to save some money, honestly. Like even at the end of my secured card term, I'm going to get that $250 back. And they do that like by graduating you to an actual credit card that is not secured, and you get that too. I'll get that $250 back, and that'll be an extra $250 in my pocket. I mean, who doesn't want $250 in their pocket? It's crazy. All right, and then the last side thing I want to talk about is our inquiries, because I actually had like an abnormal amount of inquiries. I think it was just a mixture of like running my businesses, but also a mixture of just being irresponsible. But what I would do is I would do the same thing and send a letter to the credit agencies and also the lenders that had pulled the credit and just ask for verification. You can do a quick Google search for this too. It's just the same thing. They verify it, and it's on your credit report for 2 years, which I mean isn't horrible, but if they can't verify it, then it falls off your credit report. And I mean, that's great. I mean, who doesn't like to have something negative come off the report? Now, hard inquiries aren't like super negative, but if you have a lot, that's where it starts to become an issue. And that's where it became an issue for myself, So this is what worked for me too. I had like 30 inquiries. Don't ask any questions about that. But I had like 10 of them removed, which is good, but the rest are gonna fall off in about a year now because I haven't been applying for credit or haven't done anything that was gonna give me a hard inquiry. All right, you guys, and like this is just the start of my journey of fixing my credit and being able to have a good credit score. And my credit score is not perfect right now, but I mean, just to show over 100 points in a year, to show 200 points almost in 2 years, I mean, that's crazy. And with very minimal effort, without paying a bunch of extra money out there, or without really doing anything that is going to take up too much time, I was able to fix my score substantially, and I can continue doing this until I hit that 750, 780, and then eventually hopefully an 800. And once we get to that point, that's a different ball game, I suppose. Alright, you guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Also subscribe down below and hit the bell so that you can continue following this journey with me. And I'll keep you updated on what is going to come out of fixing my credit score. And of course, I'll let you know when we hit that 750.